Charlotte Harper was a name synonymous with success, integrity, and generosity. For over 3 decades, she had poured her heart into building Harper Enterprises, a company known not just for its innovation, but for the ethical way it operated. From her modest beginnings to becoming one of the most respected businesswomen in Chicago, Charlotte's journey had been marked by hard work and a steadfast commitment to her principles. Her values shaped the foundation of her company and her family, or so she thought. David, her eldest son, had always been different. Even as a child, his ambitions burned brighter and fiercer than anyone else's. While Charlotte saw ambition as a force for good, something to fuel progress and inspire change, David saw it as a weapon. His relentless drive for power and control consumed him. Partnered with his equally ambitious wife, Claire, the two formed a formidable duo, one that thrived on manipulation and self-interest. As a child, David's calculating nature often alarmed Charlotte. She remembered moments when his sharp intellect and charm were used not for good, but to gain an upper hand over his peers. Claire was no different. From the moment David introduced her to the family, Charlotte sensed an undertone of something too smooth, too polished in Claire's demeanor. But love blinds, and Charlotte had chosen to focus on their strengths, believing her guidance could steer them toward a better path. In stark contrast was Adam, her younger son. He was Charlotte's heart, a man of empathy, integrity, and quiet strength. Where David sought power, Adam sought connection. While David and Claire plotted and schemed, Adam worked tirelessly to uphold the values instilled in him by his mother. He lived modestly, choosing a career in education, and often stood as a moral counterweight to his older brother. Yet, despite their differences, Adam always tried to keep peace within the family. For years, Charlotte had ignored the signs of division growing among her children. She had hoped that family bonds would eventually heal the rift, but she didn't know that David and Claire's ambitions had grown darker, nor could she have foreseen the depths of their betrayal. One crisp autumn afternoon, Charlotte sat in the sunlit living room of her elegant home, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she flipped through a book on leadership. It was her quiet moment of the day, a rare pause amidst her demanding schedule. The warmth of the sun streaming through the windows felt comforting, a small respite from the pressures of her responsibilities. David and Claire entered, their presence filling the room with an air of false cheer. They had been visiting more frequently of late, always with smiles and gestures of care. Charlotte, unaware of their ulterior motives, welcomed the attention. As they sat across from her, David leaned forward, a smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom," he began smoothly, "Claire and I have been thinking about your health. You've been working so hard for so many years, and we worry about you. We've been researching ways to keep you feeling your best." Charlotte raised an eyebrow, intrigued but skeptical. "Oh, and what have you found?" Claire chimed in, her voice soft and persuasive. "It's a tonic, made from natural herbs. It's designed to support memory and energy, especially for someone as busy as you. We thought it might help you manage everything more easily." Charlotte tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "A tonic? That's very thoughtful of you both. What does it taste like?" "It's nearly tasteless," David assured her. "We've done a lot of research on it, and we're confident it's the best choice." Claire handed her a small, elegant bottle with an intricate label. Charlotte examined it, her initial skepticism giving way to gratitude. She trusted her children. After all, they had gone out of their way to show concern for her well-being, and she saw no reason to doubt their intentions. "Well," Charlotte said with a nod, "if you think it will help, I'll give it a try." David and Claire exchanged a fleeting glance, a silent communication that only they understood. "You'll see, Mom," Claire said warmly. "It's going to make a big difference." In the days that followed, Charlotte dutifully added the tonic to her daily routine. At first, she noticed no changes, and life continued as usual. But soon, subtle shifts began to occur. She would forget small things, where she had placed her keys, a colleague's name during a meeting, or the title of the book she was reading. These lapses were minor at first, almost amusing, but they grew more frequent. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Charlotte paused mid-sentence, a confused expression on her face. "I was going to mention something," she said, placing a hand on her forehead, "but I can't seem to remember what it was." David reached out to pat her hand, his voice filled with mock concern. "You've been working so hard. Mom, maybe you just need to rest more." Claire nodded in agreement. "The tonic might take some time to fully work. Keep taking it, and I'm sure you'll feel better soon." Charlotte smiled weakly, brushing off her unease. She trusted her children. They wouldn't steer her wrong, would they? But as the weeks passed, the effects of the tonic became undeniable. Charlotte's once sharp mind grew clouded. She began missing important appointments and losing her train of thought during conversations. Her confidence waned, and she found herself increasingly dependent on David and Claire for support. Behind the scenes, David and Claire were carefully executing their plan. They had bribed Dr. Morgan, a physician willing to corroborate their fabricated story. During a routine checkup, Charlotte expressed her concerns about her memory lapses. Dr. Morgan nodded sympathetically. "From what you're describing, it's possible that these are early signs of cognitive decline. We'll need to run some tests." Charlotte's heart sank. Cognitive decline? The words felt heavy, almost unreal. She looked at David and Claire, who sat beside her, their expressions somber but supportive. "Don't worry, Mom," David said, squeezing her hand. "We'll take care of everything. You won't have to face this alone." Claire added softly, "We'll make sure you're safe and cared for. That's what family is for." Charlotte didn't know it yet, but she was falling into a carefully constructed trap. David and Claire's ambitions knew no bounds, and they were willing to sacrifice the very person who had given them everything to achieve their goals. As Charlotte's world began to unravel, the shadows of betrayal loomed ever larger, threatening to consume everything she had worked so hard to build. Charlotte Harper's days began to blur together, the sharpness of her once keen mind dulled by a fog she couldn't quite place. The memory lapses that had started as small inconveniences were becoming more alarming. Meetings she had once led with confidence were now moments of quiet confusion. The trusted staff at Harper Enterprises began to notice. Though they refrained from saying anything directly, they respected her too much. But whispers started to spread. David and Claire, however, were quick to step into the void Charlotte's struggles had created. They presented themselves as her unwavering support system, always nearby with a comforting word or a quick solution to any problem. They handled her appointments, managed her schedule, and slowly took control of the company operations, all under the guise of helping their ailing mother. "Mom, let me take care of that for you," David would say, gently but firmly. Whenever Charlotte hesitated over a decision, Claire would nod along, her sympathetic smile masking the calculation behind her eyes. Charlotte felt a growing sense of unease, but she couldn't deny that she needed help. Dr. Morgan's diagnosis had been a cruel confirmation of her worst fears, early signs of dementia. Though part of her doubted the diagnosis, she couldn't argue with the symptoms she was experiencing. Her own body and mind seemed to be betraying her. One afternoon, David and Claire invited Charlotte to their home under the pretense of discussing her health. The house was as sleek and polished as their public personas. But to Charlotte, it felt cold as she sat on the plush sofa, a cup of tea in her trembling hands. David and Claire exchanged a glance. "Mom," David began, his tone serious but gentle. "We've been talking about how to make sure you're well taken care of." Charlotte frowned, setting her tea down. "I don't need to be taken care of, David. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own life." Claire leaned forward, her voice soft and soothing. "We know you're strong, Charlotte, but you've been forgetting things more often, and we're worried. We think it might be time to consider moving somewhere with professional care, just to make sure you're safe." Charlotte's heart sank. "You mean a nursing home?" Her voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and fear. "This is my home. I don't want to leave it." David placed a hand on her shoulder. "We understand how hard this must be, but it's for the best. You'll have round-the-clock care and a comfortable place to live. And of course, we'll visit you all the time." Charlotte's instinct screamed at her to resist. to hold her ground. But the fog clouding her mind made her doubt herself. Could they be right? Was she truly incapable of managing her own life? Reluctantly, she nodded. If you think it's best for me. David and Claire exchanged a triumphant glance, though their expressions remained carefully composed. The moment Charlotte agreed, the pieces of their plan began to fall into place. Within weeks, Charlotte was moved to Greenfield Care Center, a well-appointed facility on the outskirts of Chicago. The transition was swift, almost clinical, leaving her little time to process the upheaval. Her elegant home, the place where she had raised her sons and built her legacy, was sold within days. David and Claire assured her it was necessary to cover expenses, though Charlotte's gut told her something was amiss. In the quiet of her new room, Charlotte sat by the window, gazing out at the neatly manicured gardens. She felt abandoned, a shadow of the woman she once was. The days were long and lonely, filled with routines that blurred together. Her visits from David and Claire were sporadic at best, their once concerned words now reduced to vague reassurances. Meanwhile, David and Claire wasted no time capitalizing on their newfound control. With Charlotte out of the picture, they sold off Harper Enterprises, pocketing the profits and plunging the company into a new era of greed-driven leadership. They moved into an extravagant penthouse in downtown Chicago, flaunting their wealth and status at every opportunity. To the outside world, they were a picture of success, but the foundation of their empire was built on lies and betrayal. In the sterile quiet of Greenfield Care Center, Charlotte found an unexpected ally, Grace, a young nurse with a warm smile and a gentle demeanor. Grace had noticed Charlotte's sadness and isolation and made it her mission to bring some light into her days. "Good afternoon, Charlotte," Grace said one day, entering the room with a tray of tea and biscuits. "How are you feeling today?" Charlotte looked up, her expression weary. "Lonely," she admitted softly. "It's hard not to feel forgotten here." Grace pulled up a chair, her compassionate eyes meeting Charlotte's. "You're not forgotten, Charlotte. I'm here for you. And if there's anything you want to talk about, I'm all ears." Over time, Charlotte began to open up to Grace, sharing bits and pieces of her story. She spoke of her company, her values, and her sons. As she recounted the events leading to her stay at Greenfield, Grace's brow furrowed with concern. "Something doesn't sit right with me," Grace said one evening, after hearing about the tonic and the sudden sale of the house. "You're sharp, Charlotte. These memory lapses you're describing don't sound natural." Charlotte hesitated. "Dr. Morgan said it's early dementia." Grace shook her head. "Even if that's the case, it doesn't explain everything. I think we need to dig deeper." With Charlotte's reluctant approval, Grace contacted Adam, the son Charlotte had always trusted. When Adam arrived at Greenfield, the sight of his mother's frail state filled him with anger and determination. "Mom," Adam said, taking her hand, "I need to know everything. What happened before you came here?" Charlotte recounted the events as best as she could, her voice trembling with emotion. When she finished, Adam's jaw was set with resolve. "They've manipulated you, Mom," he said, his voice low but firm. "I don't know how yet, but I'm going to find out." Adam spent nights poring over financial records, legal documents, and emails, piecing together the puzzle. What he found confirmed his worst fears. David and Claire had orchestrated everything. The tonic was laced with substances designed to impair Charlotte's cognition. Dr. Morgan had been bribed to fabricate a diagnosis, and the proceeds from the sale of the family home and company had been funneled into private accounts under David and Claire's names. With the evidence in hand, Adam returned to Greenfield, his face grim but determined. "Mom," he said, sitting beside her, "we're going to fight this. I won't let them get away with it." For the first time in weeks, Charlotte felt a flicker of hope. "Thank you, Adam," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I knew I could count on you." As they prepared to confront David and Claire, Charlotte steeled herself. She was no longer the confused, vulnerable woman they had taken advantage of. With Adam by her side, she was ready to reclaim her life. The day of reckoning came quicker than David and Claire anticipated. Adam had spent weeks meticulously preparing, gathering enough evidence to not only expose their betrayal, but to ensure justice was served. Armed with financial records, correspondence with Dr. Morgan, and testimonies from Grace and Charlotte, he arranged for the truth to be revealed in the most public way possible at a shareholder meeting for what was once Harper Enterprises. Charlotte, though still recovering, insisted on attending. "This is my company, Adam," she said firmly. "I build it, and I won't let them destroy it without a fight." The grand conference room of Harper Enterprises was packed with board members, shareholders, and executives. David stood confidently at the head of the room, addressing the crowd with his trademark charisma. Claire sat nearby, her polished demeanor radiating composure. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Midway through David's presentation, Adam entered the room, Charlotte by his side. The murmurs that rippled through the crowd were immediate. David froze, his confident facade cracking for the first time. "What's the meaning of this?" David demanded, his voice laced with irritation. Adam strode to the front of the room, his voice calm but commanding. "It means the truth is finally coming out." He turned to the gathered audience, holding up a stack of documents. "I have evidence that David and Claire Harper have systematically defrauded this company, manipulated our mother, and stolen assets for their personal gain." Gasps and whispers erupted in the room as Adam laid out the evidence. He displayed bank statements showing illicit transfers, emails between David and Dr. Morgan conspiring to falsify Charlotte's diagnosis, and the sale documents for the Harper family home, signed under suspicious circumstances. Charlotte stepped forward, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "I trusted my son and his wife. I believed they had my best interests at heart, but they betrayed me and everything I stand for. This company was built on integrity, and I will not allow it to be destroyed by greed." David's face turned pale as the weight of the evidence became undeniable. He tried to interrupt, but the room had turned against him. Shareholders demanded answers, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. "David Harper," one executive said, standing, "you have not only betrayed your family, but the values of this company. We will not stand for it." Claire, who had remained silent, finally spoke, her voice trembling. "This is all a misunderstanding. We were only trying to help Charlotte. She agreed to everything we did." Adam's eyes narrowed. "Help? You called drugging our mother and stealing her life's work helping? You manipulated her trust and left her in a care facility so you could profit off her legacy." The authorities, already alerted by Adam, arrived shortly after. David and Claire were taken into custody, their protests drowned out by the murmurs of the crowd. Dr. Morgan, implicated in the conspiracy, was also arrested, his medical license revoked. As the room cleared, Adam turned to Charlotte. "It's over, Mom. They won't hurt you or anyone else again." Charlotte nodded, her relief tempered by the sadness of losing a son to greed. "Thank you, Adam. You've reminded me that integrity still exists in this family." In the weeks that followed, Charlotte began the process of reclaiming her life. Harper Enterprises, under her guidance and Adam's support, was restored to its original mission of ethical leadership. Grace, the nurse who had been instrumental in uncovering the truth, was offered a position in the company's new philanthropic initiative, focusing on healthcare reform. David and Claire were convicted of fraud and theft, their assets seized to repay the damages they had caused. From the prison cells, they had little left but time to reflect on the choices that had brought them to ruin. Charlotte returned home, welcomed back to the house she had built with her own hands. It had been purchased by Adam from its new owners and restored to its former glory. In the garden, where she had once dreamed of the future, she and Adam sat together, watching the sunset. "We'll rebuild, Mom," Adam said, his voice full of quiet determination. Together. Charlotte smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Yes, Adam, together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in a warm, golden glow, Charlotte felt a sense of peace. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy her was behind her. And in its place, she found the strength to move forward. With Adam by her side, she knew they could create a future rooted in trust, honesty, and love, a future free from the shadows of the past.